don't allow yourself to believe that you're only going to make mistakes early in the process, but instead expect that you're going to fail often. And that's not an indication that you're messing up. It's an indication that you're learning, that you're growing, and that you continue to push the envelope. You could stay somewhere safe. You could stick with what you definitely know and has no risk of getting messed up. And maybe because of your legacy, that's your heritage and that's your tendency to do that, is just play it safe. But then you're going to be limited in your opportunities to the extent that you play it safe. So you need to fail often so that you're constantly pushing the envelope, constantly challenging things.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Social Media Mindset. And I am so excited for you to have a piece of this episode in your ears today, or in your eyeballs, however you're choosing to consume this, because, you know, it's not often I get to bring on someone that shares in the same greatness of my name, but also talk to someone that I think might actually own more businesses than I do. And that are actually successful. Let's go ahead and add that. Let's add that part in too. And so Kyle GABHART, bro, welcome to the show.
It is an absolute pleasure, Kyle.
So I real quick, I want you, because you have one of the most incredible voices of all the people that I know. You're actually going to record the intro for my podcast.
I already have. Future. I just haven't sent it over, but it already exists.
Yes. So,
yes, sir.
So will you just give us a welcome to the Social Media Mindset? Can you just give us one of those real quick?
Sure. There's a lot of variations that I could envision. It all depends on what kind of mode you're going for.
Yeah.
But if you have a lot of female audience members that may be enticed by more of a baritone voice, welcome to the Social Media Mindset with Kyle Draper. Right. So we could go that route if that's kind of what we're going for.
Okay.
Or, if we wanted to go more hip, hey, welcome for the Social Media Mindset with your host, Kyle Draper. Right. So there's all kinds of different energy and levels that we could go for. But I've always been told I have a face for radio. The earliest was the movie phone. So that was kind of my shtick, was hello and welcome to Movie Phone, brought to you by 106.1 KISS FM.
Dude, come on, man. Taking me back to the 90s. Unbelievable. There's people that are going to listen to this episode that this makes no sense to them. Like they've never had to call a phone number to find out movie times in their life. That was a real thing.
Oh yeah, because you didn't want to look it up in the newspaper to see what movies were available.
Right. It's unbelievable. So, okay, Kyle. So we've played around, and we're going to continue to have fun in this episode
for sure.
But give everybody a rundown, because you have your hands in a lot of different things, and quite frankly, you do all of them extremely well, which is kind of annoying, if I'm being honest. So give everybody the flyover of who Kyle GABHART is.
Sure. So my bride and I have a marriage ministry. We've been leading that since 2014. We've got just shy of 30,000 followers on Facebook. We do marriage workshops and conferences. We did one earlier this month at Northwood Church. We're currently leading a marriage class. We do that a couple of times a year. There's, I think, 10 couples in that marriage class right now. We've got a book on marriage. It's called The Phoenix Marriage: God Creates Beauty Out of Ashes. Then I've got a few other books as well. There's one up here, Legends Don't Retire, and Neither Should You. That's actually the platform that you and I initially got connected on, because we were both speaking at the same conference. So that's my public speaking arm, as well as book publishing. I've got a few other books as well. I think that my mom was the only one that actually bought any of them. But that's neither. But those are the two most recent ones. Let's see. Then I've got a financial planning and wealth management practice, Bluegrass Legacy Group, based here out of Keller, Texas. We've got clients in, I think it's 11 or 12 states.
Wow.
And we work with individuals and especially entrepreneurs and nonprofits in helping them figure out how to align their goals with their assets and organize all those pieces so they're headed in the same direction. So that's a big area of focus for me. It's also an element of what's incorporated in the Legends Don't Retire. I've got a game design and publishing business. So the two boxes you see back here are for Arctic Scavengers. So this is the English version of Arctic Scavengers. This is the German version of the expansion, specifically the Recon expansion. It's also available in French. We've done 3 expansions. We're working on a 4th. Sorry, 2 expansions, working on a 3rd. We did a promo that it wasn't really an expansion. It was just some extra cards.
Dude, here's what's crazy. Somebody I know is going to watch this and they're going to be like, you know, the guy that created and I'm gonna be like, what? Wait, what? Huh? What? And they're gonna think I'm so much cooler now because I know you.
That's amazing. Let's see. I've got a real estate management company. I've got an IT consulting and training business. I license courseware as well. I don't know if that's part of the IT consulting business or if it's separate, because it's all IT courseware I'm licensing.
Who knows?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. And then actually on the book side, I've got a book publishing company as well, like as a turnkey deal. It's called Olive Street Press. So someone who has the content but doesn't know, in the modern era, right, all the different pieces involved in a book. Yeah. It's the editing and the book jacket and the formatting and the how do you get it to Amazon, or do you go to Amazon? Do you physically print it, or do you use their KDP print on demand deal, and like handling all of that stuff as a one-stop shop for folks. So that's something we do as well. And I don't know, I got a couple of other ideas in the works, but that's good enough.
So many things. So
yeah. Oh, sorry. Apologize. I'm also on the board for a nonprofit called Unlocked Ministries. I'm on the board for the Keller Chamber, and I'm the chairman of the board. And then I am now on the advisory board for an oil and gas company based out of Dallas called King Operating. And we're currently doing a syndicate funding raise for exploration in the Permian. Okay, now I'm done.
How does your life happen every day in a positive way?
Interesting. Well, the biggest piece is the Lord, first and foremost.
Yeah.
And an awareness of my very, very, very small piece in the equation and in the universe, and even in my household, quite frankly. And then the second piece is just an immense amount of gratitude. So I stand on the shoulders of giants. The fact that it's called Bluegrass Legacy Group, the fact that the book is entitled Legends Don't Retire, is because I firmly believe that I was handed a legacy by my grandfather and by my father. And it wasn't a giant pool of dollars. It wasn't like, we've got museums with the last name GABHART slapped on it or statues or anything like that. It's legacy in the sense of I was handed off a set of values, and a set of standards, and a set of principles in terms of how you live your life. And that, coupled with unconditional love, has given me an absolute outrageous advantage in life, because I know for a fact who I am. I know that there's a safe place that I can land, and I know I can take absolutely any risk on the planet. And the people that love me and care for me are going to be there to catch me. And a lot of times those, don't work out, but enough times they do work out that things just work incredibly well. And so I'm super blessed, and I recognize the privileged position I come from in terms of being loved and knowing I'm loved. And the strength that gives me to take chances and risks. And you take enough of those shots, some of them go in.
So I want to go a different direction than I planned on going.
Fair enough.
Just based on what you just said. For a lot of people, right? So you are, and I believe this is true for myself as well. We are carrying on the legacies that were set before us.
Absolutely.
We are honored to do so. It is a privilege. There's a lot of pressure having come from a good legacy.
Yep.
But there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this and they're going to think, my legacy sucks. My parents were the worst. Or maybe it's my parents were great, but they, nothing ever worked. It was just, it was a failure after another. The heart was in the right place, but whatever it was, right? The cards may have been stacked against them. What's your advice to the person that, like, your story frustrates them because they don't have a legacy to carry on, and they're not really sure what to do?
Yeah, no, I love that question, Kyle. That's so good. The thing I would say is that there is knowledge and there is wisdom in failure. And what I find too often is that people encounter failure and the lesson they learn from it is, well, don't do that. And then they go to some place of safety. And I frequently coach to my teams the importance of failing early, failing often, and failing forward.
So good.
Right? So fail early in that you want to make mistakes as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
As fast as you can, figure out which system doesn't work, which process doesn't work, which template or tool isn't going to work. Figure that out as quick as you can. So that's fail early.
Wow.
Fail often is don't allow yourself to believe that you're only going to make mistakes early in the process. But instead, expect that you're going to fail often. And that's not an indication that you're messing up. It's an indication that you're learning, that you're growing, and that you continue to push the envelope. You could stay somewhere safe. You could stick with what you definitely know and has no risk of getting messed up. And maybe because of your legacy, that's your heritage and that's your tendency to do that, is just play it safe. But then you're going to be limited in your opportunities to the extent that you play it safe. So you need to fail often, so that you're constantly pushing the envelope, constantly challenging things.
Love it.
And then lastly, it's crucial you fail forward. You've got to grow and learn from those things and take on either learning from the past in the legacy of your family and things that they tried that didn't work, or in the present, things that you've tried that didn't work, and you build off of it, you grow from it, and you become a stronger version of yourself based off of that ongoing process of learning from failure.
How do you keep failure from defining you? Because I think so many people shy away from failure because then they feel defined by that failure. And so I know that's not the case for you. Anyone that's had a lot of companies, people love to be like, wow, you must be so rich. Like, that's amazing. What I see is, holy cow, bro, you have failed a lot.
That's true.
Like, that's
so true.
Like, that's what I hear.
Yes.
As someone that owns multiple companies, holy cow, your failures are adding up. So how does that not define you? And you carry through anyway.
Yeah, for sure. So quick sidebar, by the way.
Okay.
Last week, I had to let go of my first employee at one of my firms.
Wow.
And the prior month, I had let go of my most recent employee at that firm. And so in the terms of like, oh man, everything just seems to work out well. No, it really doesn't. And like, we're constantly like, oop, that doesn't work. Oh, that doesn't work. Oh, that doesn't work. I introduced a completely new technology to Bluegrass Legacy Group earlier this week. And this is Tuesday, right? So we've already got a new piece of software we're using because we're constantly growing and changing and pushing the envelope and trying new things. All right, but back to your original question. I think it's really, really important from a mental health standpoint that we not define ourselves by either failure or success.
It's good.
Right? So the very question, how do you avoid defining yourself by failure? I'm like, whoa, just because it happened to work out well in one case, you're really setting yourself up for a huge disappointment if you allow yourself to get defined based off of success. Because what happens when it doesn't work out, when it doesn't go the way you thought it was going to? So I think it's crucial that we pivot entirely and redefine it and define ourselves in terms of a growth mindset. Define ourselves in terms of resiliency. Define ourselves in terms of core values. All things that have nothing to do with success or failure.
I love that. It's so good. Do you know who Dr. Carol Dweck is?
I do not.
So she wrote a book literally just called Mindset. And she's a psychologist or psychiatrist, one of those smart people.
Sure.
And that her entire thesis is built on you either are growth minded or you're not.
Okay. There you go.
Right. That's it. Either you believe you can be better or you believe, right? She calls it the fixed mindset.
Gotcha.
Of Kyle, you're better at that. And you're just always going to be better at that to me. Like that's the fixed mindset.
Sure.
As opposed to, wow, that was so good. You're so much better than that at me. I think I can get there too.
I love that.
It's powerful. It's a great book. You would love it. So I want to, this is a social media podcast. So obviously I'm the boss. I can talk about whatever the heck I want whenever I want to. So we don't have to always talk social media, but I do think people will be interested to get some insight on you and your wife having a Facebook group with over 30,000 people in it. Like that's a big deal, right? Like that's a lot. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so can you talk about like, what would be a couple of the practical tips that you could give on what you believe is led to that growth for you guys?
Yeah, for sure. The first thing I would say is that there is no easy button on it. It definitely takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and it takes a lot of consistency. Consistency is probably the most important piece of it, number one. Number two, don't try to do it alone. In some cases, that could be partnering with other organizations that already have a larger platform and really building collaboration with them.
Yeah.
So in the early days, we were connecting with Fierce Marriage and Husband Revolution and some other big platforms. And I was doing blog posts for them. And it was basically they would have visitors, if you will, come and guest blog posts. And so I was doing blog posts for them, and we were, reposting each other's messages and things of that nature. So leveraging others' resources, or, quite frankly, utilizing services where it makes sense. So I think you might know of a couple of avenues people could go down if they were interested in partnering with someone that could, they could spend a few dollars and it could help them boost their social media capabilities. But trying to do it on your own is going to be a long, hard slog. Partnering with others that are like-minded and either doing it purely as a collaboration or perhaps even hiring in the case of tapping into your network of resources. I think that part is crucial. And then the third thing is just being authentic and vulnerable. What people don't need is more static content. What they crave is things where you're actually opening up your heart and your life and what's going on.
So good. When you're finding, so I'm assuming like you did research to figure out like who would be the strategic partners that we ultimately want to align with.
Yep.
What did the ask look like to them?
So it was about 12 years ago when I did that. But my recollection is that ask was to, first of all, validate that I saw value in what they were doing. And so what I would do was point out a post that they had made, content that they had created, and I affirmed that content first before I started pitching my own side of that. Right?
Yep.
And then the next thing I did was just barely pivot from that and ask, how can I come alongside you and help further promote and support your messaging and your platform? And only after getting traction there did I then start saying, oh, and by the way, here's something I've got that I could use help with as well. But if you come right out of the gate saying, hey, here's my thing that I want your help with, the likelihood of that going anywhere is really low.
Yeah, don't go in with finger guns.
Correct. But they're cool.
Anybody, if you're listening to the literal podcast, you don't have any idea what we're talking about right now. But yeah, dude, I feel like there's so many things that like what you said just now, it shouldn't be profound. Like it to a lot of people, and maybe it's because like you and I are both Christ followers, but I also know a ton of selfish Christ followers, right? So I still think even inside of that, like there's just a group of people that truly identify as givers.
Sure.
And that's just what we are. And so it's not profound to me to hear you say, I just actually like reached out to see how I could be of service to them. But to most people in sales, a lot of people in sales don't have that big, generous heart. And it is all about what's in it for me. And so I think that's what some of you might need to rewind about 90 seconds and go listen again. Like, you want social media to work for you at a high level, make it about the value you give to other people.
100%.
So how do you determine, because again, you've got a lot of different companies, which means you've got a lot of different avatars, right? Where you have to identify over and over and over again, who's my ideal client for this company, and then for this one, and then for this one, because they're not the same for all of them.
No.
So what's the process for, like, how do you determine like what that group genuinely needs or wants?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to go back to my fail early, fail often, fail forward.
Okay.
So I hold it with an open hand, because nearly always I'll go in with an idea in mind of like, aha, I've got it. I know exactly who it is. And then over a process of elimination, I learn, yeah, I had it all wrong. That's not who it is at all. And so I just, to the image I aim to have in my mind is from Friends. And Ross and I is helping move that couch, and he keeps yelling, pivot, pivot. Like, that's what you got to do. You got to keep pivoting. You just have to pivot.
Right.
But what happens, I think, too often is we've got it in our heads like, I'm going to take this couch or this chase lounge or whatever, and I am just going to shove it through the wall if that's what it takes. And with enough grit and determination, I can make this happen. And you probably can make that happen, but you'll also end up with your furniture stuck halfway through the sheetrock.
So good. That is truly, that's not what I thought you would say, but I think that's the best advice.
Yeah.
Because I tell people all the time, like, the reason I'm where I am with video specifically is because I've deleted more videos from my phone than most people have ever even post. Right? Like, and so for the person that's like, they're just dabbling in stuff.
Yep.
They're going to try 52 times this year if they do something once a week.
Sure.
I'm going to do 52 in a month.
Yeah.
And so it's that constant willingness to pivot, but also to pivot, you've got to be willing to accept blame.
Sure.
For when it goes wrong each time, because most people, instead of pivoting, they just decide to quit because now they're embarrassed or it didn't work. Right. And, gosh, this is where I think most people just get completely bogged down and stuck.
Yep.
So how do you get somebody to be more open to pivoting that isn't naturally a pivoter?
Yeah. We have to redefine what success looks like. And we have to take away the stigma associated with failure. So it's going to sort of harken back a little bit to that fail early, fail often, fail forward.
Yeah.
But it's also going to be a redefinition of success. So the problem, I think, at its core is there's this belief we have that we're going to line up and take a shot like it's a free throw. And you're standing there and you're going to keep aim, fire. And you get this like 1 or 2 chances at making it.
Yeah.
And if you do, the crowd goes wild. And if it bounces off the rim, you hang your head in shame. And, that was our last chance to finally win the game. The clock's about to run out. You're toast. And so we've got to redefine it entirely and go, no. Success is about tomorrow morning. Are you going to get back up and go at it again? right? Are you going to lace up your sneakers and get back out on the court? Or in the case of like social media, are you going to fire your phone up again tomorrow? Are you going to try another video? Are you going to make 5 more posts? If you're in sales, you're going to make 3 more phone calls. Like, what is it you're going to do to continue to push forward? So I would say success is about resiliency. Success is about consistency. I was doing a talk for actually a realtor group last week, and I was speaking to them about goal setting. And I asked them for what their goals were. And, one had a goal of 16 transactions for the year, and one had a goal of 19 transactions for the year. And they were rattling off all their different goals, and I was writing them on the board. And I said, okay, all of that's great. But everything you just told me constitutes an output that you have 0 control over. Absolutely none. You cannot force X number of transactions to occur.
So good.
No way.
Yeah.
No control over that. And furthermore, it's dangerous because you could work your tail off and do all the things you ought to be doing in the month of January and be behind trend on your output, on your transaction. And conversely, you could just happen to call a couple of the right people, or something you started 6 months ago falls in your lap and finally comes through, and you could be way ahead of trend, and then you get lazy and you take your foot off the gas, right?
Yep.
Because you're measuring the wrong thing. What you've got to measure is the only thing you can control, which is your actions, your inputs. The activity you do on a daily basis is the only thing you have control over. You can control how many phone calls you make, how many emails you send, how many posts you do. You can directly control how many drop-ins you do with centers of influence, how many care packages you send off, how many handwritten thank you notes you do. You have direct control over those things. And if you measure that, then you'll continue that level of activity regardless of the outputs.
Yeah.
And so that level of activity will build up over time and result in outputs, result in production, but it's the only thing you can control. And if you focus on controlling that, number one, you won't slack off if you happen to have a really good month in terms of production. You also will have reason to feel confident, even if you didn't see the results this month.
Yeah.
Oh no, but high five to myself, pat on the back. I did all the level of activity that I was aiming for. So I'm a rock star, high five. And so then you've got the motivation to do it again next month. Now, you need some accountability along the way, and you may need to evaluate those inputs and go, some of those aren't as productive as I thought. Let me tweak the number of calls or the kinds of posts or the way I'm reaching out to people in person or whatever it is. But now you're focusing on the thing you can actually control rather than focusing the thing that you have 0 control of.
Yeah. Golly. So good, man. Why are we so naturally bad at that? Because it's so easy to just be like, yeah, I want to get 50 new clients this year. Done. Right. Stamp it. Boom. There it is. Like, that's so easy. Why is it that way?
It's all, I really think it comes down at a fundamental level to delayed gratification, which is something that my dad was really, really good about coaching me on. When you focus on something like how many pounds did I lose this year instead of how much water did I drink,
right?
Then, the pounds feel like more of that significant thing. It's that attaboy thing. And so then anything I do to drop pounds is legitimate. Even if it's unhealthy, even if it's dangerous,
right?
It's still like, hey, you're hitting your target. Good job. Well, maybe that I shouldn't have been focusing on that to begin with. I mean, similarly, I could do a lot of crazy things to take on 50 clients.
Right.
And maybe those aren't healthy. Maybe they're not sustainable. Like, we just generally focus on the wrong things, because if we were to focus on the things that are healthy, sustainable, predictable, repeatable, that's less fun. It's less exciting. It's more about like, this is what I need to do over my entire lifespan. And that's just harder to get jazzed about. And so as a society, we tend to reward things that are more splashy. We reward things that in and of themselves may look impressive, but don't necessarily have any substance behind them.
That's it. It's spot on. You should just be on every episode. We should just do every episode together.
We'll call it Kyle Squared.
Yes. So good. So before we wrap all this up, I decided I think the title of this episode needs to be "You're Measuring the Wrong Thing."
Ooh, I like that.
Because you said that, and I think it fits everything we've talked about so far.
I dig it.
And it's not that we're necessarily doing the wrong thing; it's that we're measuring the wrong thing.
That's really solid.
It's good. You said it, not me. So, so that was very solid from you. So, where I want to go before we talk about something else, or this episode is over, is in your most recent book is legends don't retire, and neither should you.
Yes, sir.
And so that book is about legacy. And in your book, so I'm kind of forcing you to kind of like play with me in this area we call social media, because that's not what your book is about, right? Like your book is based in in a lot in finance and how to create legacy, but obviously legacy is so much bigger than just the monetary piece of it.
Yep.
It's the stories that are left behind of us when we're gone. It's the things people say about us when we're not present in the room. So with social media, I love to tell people that struggle, instead of getting all like weird about like you're trying to sell something there or whatever, look at social media as a living time capsule that is taking in all of your messages. And then anybody that comes here from now on, they'll be able to see that stuff.
Yep. And
that's a lot of why I do video as much as I do. Is yes, it grows my business, but I do everything that I do because I think about like one day I won't be physically present on this earth anymore.
Sure.
And my kids are going to go like, what was great grandpa Kyle like? And instead of just looking at pictures like you and I get to do with our great relatives,
yep,
they're going to be able to go, you don't have to ask me what he was like. We created a freaking movie of every video he ever did. And I'm going to be able to make people cry and laugh.
That'd be quite the movie.
That would be quite the movie, wouldn't it? Nobody would want to see it, but it would be something.
Hopefully they trim it down to like the best nuggets from each.
But when they're all the best, how do you choose which piece is the best? And so my question is, how do we get people thinking in terms of legacy? Because we're right, like you and I probably wouldn't be considered young anymore, but we're not old. Look at all those cassette tapes, dude.
Yeah, these are sermons from my dad.
Wow. Yeah, so like that's it. That's what you get,
these, by the way,
right? Because your dad passed away a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And he's a big piece of the book. And you tell a really cool story in there about him and his funeral. And how do we like it's hard to get people that are still alive to care about when they're not.
Right.
How do we do it?
Yeah, no, that's good. It's I don't know how to get people there apart from getting them to just slow down for a moment. So, all right, there's this exercise that I do with financial planning clients where I ask them to write down on a piece of paper their current age and the current year.
Okay.
Then I ask them to write down, to add 10 to both of those numbers and write that down again. And then I ask them to add 10 to that number and write it down again. And what I say to them is, currently, right now, where you sit at your age in the year that you're in, you are limited by a host of factors. You're limited by where you live. You're limited by the age of your kids. You've got responsibilities and obligations and all kinds of things that constrain what is possible in the year 2023. And as you look at what are your goals for this year, which we tend to do at this, time of the year, you're limited in terms of what is possible over the course of the year because of where you're sitting. But 10 years from now, you've got a lot fewer limitations than you have today.
Right.
And 20 years from now, literally anything is possible. So 20 years from now, you could live anywhere in the world you want. You could talk a completely different language. You could operate in a different line of business. You could have completely different skills. Your day-to-day life could look and feel different than it does today. None of the constraints that are holding you back today have to be true 20 years from now.
Yeah.
And so what I walk them through is an exercise of what do you want to be true of your life in 20 years in terms of family, in terms of finances, in terms of your faith, in terms of your fitness, in terms of all these different aspects of life. Then if that's what you're aiming for 20 years from now, what do you need to do in the next 10 years to set the platform for making 20 a reality?
Yeah.
And then you eventually work your way back to what the heck do we do this year from that perspective? And so what I would argue is I think part of the problem that people have in really getting out there in social media is that they don't have a clear enough vision of their future self. And so they don't know how to put a message out there in alignment with that. And the messaging they do put out there or potentially would put out there is only consistent with their current self. And they may not even be super stoked about their current self. And so it's hard to get motivated about putting more content out there about the current, version 1.7 of themselves. They're not even crazy about version 1.7. They're really much more interested in, some future version 5.0 of themselves. And until they crystallize what that looks like, then it's hard to get excited about creating content and promoting a version of themselves if they haven't gone through the exercise to visualize it.
Woo! Come on. Dude, that's so good. So what do you think is because I love taking tests. You said this is like this is a, an example you run through, you run people through.
Sure.
I know like you and me and our buddy Justin Winstead, we love all the different tests we can take, and somebody likes strength finders and somebody likes, Myers-Briggs, and somebody else likes Enneagram, and somebody else likes right. There's a million of them. So would there be or is there a test that you know of that would help somebody get clarity on who they want to be or who they should be based on their personality types, their interests, anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wish there was a single test that I felt like directly satisfied that. With each of the things you mentioned, and I've done all of them and I use several of them. The only one that I utilized that I didn't hear in your list was Kolbe. But
what's that?
So Kolbe, Kolbe. It's really an assessment of how you're wired in terms of the work that you do and what you're best equipped for in terms of the types of tasks, the types of work that you would complete. It's because DISC, for example, is great about how you communicate.
Yeah.
And you've got Working Genius that Justin loves, which is more so about where you derive energy. Kolbe is more so how you're wired in terms of the type of work, the type of task, the type of productivity that you're wired for. So as an example, you'd have a relative strength on, are you someone who needs to get all the facts, all the information before you can take action? Or do you just get a little bit of information, then you're ready to go? That's the fact finder side of things. And then there's there's the implementer side of things. So are you that person that is going to start things, or are you more so that person that's going to finish things out? It's used a lot by the Strategic Coach organization, and I found it to be immensely helpful. It doesn't really speak to your question, though, which I would say there's really a lot of those different aspects that come into play. And I'd say more than anything, what you really need more than a test, you need a process.
Yeah.
You need a process to go through to discover and to document, this is the version of myself that I want to be, and here's the steps I would need to get there. And it doesn't have to be the process I laid out earlier, but something like that, where you're going through a vision exercise, where you're really elaborating that future version of yourself.
Yeah.
And then you know what you're aiming for, right? Well, I think that's the other issue, is people don't know what they're aiming for.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And I think what's key, which is where, I think you come in your line of work, where I come in my line of work, like, you need the right facilitator, the right coach that can help you uncover these things that you're like, holy cow, I'm 40 years old. I've never even thought about that. 100%. I think it's just wild that people could go through life without some form of coaching in their life.
No, you're spot on. I currently have 3 coaches.
Wow.
One of which I pay $10,000 a year for the privilege of paying my own way to get on an airplane, fly to California, put myself up in a hotel, pay for food while I'm there. I think coaching is critical. Absolutely critical.
It's huge. It's huge. So, okay, my last question, and then I'm letting you go, because you've got 18 companies to go. What do you wish you were asked about more that you're not usually asked?
Not enough people ask me how tall I am. The answer is 5'9.5". I could take my phone right now. I could call any one of my 6 children with zero context, just say, how tall is your dad? And you could wake them up in the middle of the night and ask them, they would go 5'9.5".
Why are they all so in tune to that?
I've drilled it into them. It is important. Do not cut me short. It is 5'9.5".
Oh, I guess us 6'3"ers, we don't really concern ourselves.
It's okay, brother. The Lord has us grow until we're perfect, and some of us take longer than others.
That's true. You were just made perfect so much longer ago than me.
Man, what do I wish they asked me about more? Honestly, I wish they asked me more about the Lord. Maybe I don't do a good enough job letting them know that I'm open to that discussion, but that's the thing I wish they asked me more about.
I think that's less about you and more about them.
Yeah.
Because I would probably say that that's the same thing for me.
Sure.
I love that, bro. Thank you for creating so much value in such a short amount of time. How do people get in touch with you that listen to this episode and want to connect?
Yeah, you bet. So what they're going to need to do is get an envelope and write a letter.
Oh gosh.
Send it to
What is happening? Put it on your carrier pigeon and
that's right.
Shoot in my direction.
They need to physically come down to 118 Olive Street. So GABHART, fortunately, GABHART, is not a super common last name.
Yeah.
So pretty much you can Google me, and after you get past a couple of mug shots, then you'll find me plastered all over the place. Funny note on that, by the way, early on in my entrepreneurial career, I was a partner in a IT consulting firm based out of Philly and Toronto, and I had just recently launched the first version of Arctic Scavengers. And this was before like being a nerd was cool. It was definitely not cool at all. And I had perfectly crafted my online presence so that when you Googled Kyle GABHART, my IT book showed up and me speaking at technology conferences. And I was a columnist for IBM Developer Works for like a year and a half. And like those articles would pop up and all this stuff. Like it was beautiful. And then I launched this book or this game. And all of these like people who I think primarily live in their mother's basement, like came out of the woodwork and started commenting on like chat rooms. This game is great, blah, blah, blah. Oh my goodness, I love this. Hey, let's play this weekend along with a bong and a bunch of beer that you bring over to my house. And so you would type in Kyle GABHART, and my perfectly curated view of who I was suddenly polluted with all of this stuff. And I was like, no.
Oh my god.
And so I quickly changed everything. And now every bit of it says Robert instead of and it used to, the first version of it, this is the latest version, it used to say Robert K. I wouldn't even put the Kyle in it.
Oh my gosh.
Because Kyle's my middle name, Robert's my first name. So I immediately changed everything to Robert K, Robert K, Robert K, Robert K. And I went through and scrubbed all the forums and had to, anyway, it was a huge mess. So
dude, that's just the, you know, the price you pay for fame.
Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, you know, LinkedIn is great. Probably the most common way that people get a hold of me.
Okay.
Bluegrasslegacygroup.com is fine. You can, you know, hit me up on any of those, and certainly happy to connect with folks.
Right on.
Yeah, you bet.
We'll put links in the show notes for all that stuff.
Perfect.
Dude,
hey, I appreciate the heck out of you, Kyle. You're good people.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for being on today. And thank you guys for listening. If you learned something, please consider leaving a review. I always need more of those. It lets Google and Apple and Spotify and all those places know that this is worthy of them pushing out to more people. And then we'll be back next week with another incredible episode, most likely with a guest that owns less businesses than Kyle. See you guys.